The Boxing Source Midweek Report, where we tackle the latest topics in the sport of boxing here up to this point every single Wednesday. Time to start the show.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Here we are. We are here June 11, 2025. The Midweek Report is here and is live, yes, on YouTube and also on Rumble right now. So big ups for everyone that's been able to listen live here, as we got a number of things here. We're going to be talking about a few topics that are, here on Slate. We got a few things that's going on this week. As we have an International Boxing Federation title fight that will be taking place here on Saturday at the theater at Madison Square Garden. Yep, that's right. We're going to have Richardson Hitchins there going up against George Kambosos Jr. And yes, we're going to be talking about that whole thing with the fight and the fighters involved with that. And also, I wanted to talk about this whole thing here with Canelo Alvarez and Terrence Crawford. That will be on for September 13th in Las Vegas. And we had like another announcement that is kind of tied to that weekend there in Las Vegas, as an annual event will be taking place at the Las Vegas Convention Center there on September 13th. So we're going to be talking about that as well. And then hopefully touch on what Turki Alalshikh was saying, not only in reference to the event on September 13th, but also a message to, I guess, some fighters there for their particular fighting style, so to speak, right? So we're going to get into that as well here on the Midweek Report. So once we do all of that, we'll be able to cover that and then, move forward with more instances or topics. If anyone in the live chat has some questions about, what's going on in the sport of boxing, what may have happened last week that we didn't necessarily cover, like, for example, the International Boxing Hall of Fame there at Canastota, New York. Of course, they had multiple fighters and like trainers and notable people that were inducted in the Hall of Fame on last Sunday. So, we'll see if we could also touch that, as well as you had Manny Pacquiao as they say, headlining inductee for this year's class. But, wanted to get into what's happening there at theater at Madison Square Garden. The first IBF super lightweight title defense for Richardson Hitchins going up against George Kambosos Jr. He won that IBF belt there against Liam Farrell, another Australian, back in December, over in Puerto Rico, as, that was kind of like the whole little thing going on, Matchroom and all that type of stuff. Yes, you did have Richard Hitchins as the top-rated super lightweight there in the IBF up to a particular point. And then you had a fighter that held the IBF super lightweight title for a fairly extended period of time. And some people felt like Richard Hitchins was semi-reluctant to face that fighter when he was world champion. But Liam Farrell ended up beating him. And then in the next bout, Liam Farrell goes up against Richardson Hitchins and ends up getting a decision win there on that. And that was basically a split decision win, right? So now this is his first defense over at the theater at Madison Square Garden there in his hometown of Manhattan. They're going up against George Kambosos, of course, who is a former unified lightweight champion. Once again, the former unified lightweight champion, okay? Former unified lightweight champion, right? And, also, had some type of version of a IBO title or whatever it is there when his win over Maxie Hughes, but ended up losing to Vasily Lomachenko in May of last year. Yes, he had his last fight a few months ago over in his home country or home city there in Sydney, Australia, against Jake Willie, which ended up being a replacement opponent because they had someone there in the works to go ahead and face George Kambosos, but he ended up getting injured, so Jake Willie stepped in as a replacement opponent. And George Kambosos went through 12 rounds against Jake Willie there for the unanimous decision. Okay, so now for Richardson Hitchins, this is his first defense here against George Kambosos Jr. And, when they had Matchroom Boxing had the signing there of George Kambosos. They announced like, hey, he was going in the super lightweight division and he was going to be making moves in the super lightweight division. And I'm like, oh man. Just being real, I was like, oh man, they're going to try to angle George Kambosos to fight for a world title at 140 pounds after one fight. You know, of course, this is the same George Kambosos. Yes, they did defeat Teofimo Lopez by split decision, but ended up losing twice to Devin Haney, had the majority decision to Maxie Hughes, and lost to Vasily Lomachenko before his fight in March of this year against Jake Willie. So, I mean, that is not very impressive there. That's what, 2-3 in his previous 5 fights, 2-3 for George Kambosos Jr. But yet, he is able to be put in a position to face Richardson, Hitchins. And the thing about it is like, man, sometimes I kind of like get a little bit bothered of sorts when it comes to how some fighters are able to be in the ring to fight for a world title. Okay. And with George Kambosos, come on, y'all. Come on. They got him ranked at number 3. That's right. Number 3 in the IBF. At least it looks like that from last month's ranking. So you had George Kambosos Jr. after basically one fight at 140 pounds, ranked at number 3. I mean, that's what we're looking at right here. Number 3 in the IBF rankings after one fight. Come on, y'all. What's going on with that? You know what I mean? So now you got Richardson Hitchins. Here's his opportunity to like kind of like show that, okay, I should be among the top fighters there in the 140-pound division. I should be able to just watch this dude, not just, dominate, because he's had instances where he's like had 10 rounds to nothing in a decision or 9 rounds to 1 or almost like a clean sweep or whatever it is. But here with George Kambosos, man, come on, man. You know how Allen Iverson says, we talking about practice. Folks, we're talking about George Kambosos. I'm just being real. You know what I'm saying? And see, man, Alberto, shout out to Alberto on the live chat. He says Kambosos is getting cooked on Saturday. Listen, he needed, man, he don't need to be slow cooked. It need to be barbecue chicken. You need to be barbecue chicken alert. Okay. Barbecue chicken alert that it ends up he gets stopped. You know what I mean? He gets stopped on Saturday. I don't know, man. He got his promoters. I don't know if he's still out there with who is it? Who was our guy in New York that be promoting that has co-promotions out there in Australia sometimes? I was like, come on, man. How is George Kambosos able to get this spot? You know what I'm saying? Topics as I guess belts helped him get in place. Hey, man, I don't know what belt he got here at 140, but hey, he got the belts there against Teofimo Lopez. They ended up losing them to Devin Haney. They had like an IBO belt at lightweight, and then lost that to Vasily Lomachenko, which ended up being Vasily Lomachenko's last fight. And yeah, I might talk about Vasily Lomachenko too here later on. So there you go. But I mean, hey, we got George Kambosos in the main event here in New York. And yeah, I know he's, had a couple of fights there in the theater at Madison Square Garden or whatever it is, or even at Madison Square Garden. And the last time he was at the theater at Madison Square Garden, he faced Teofimo Lopez. So when it comes to New York City, he's 2-0. He ended up, 3-0. I'm telling you that right now. He ends up having this win that man, that would be insane. That would be absolutely insane. What did Alberto say? Call him in a retirement announcement by Kambosos. Oh my God. Yo, that would be something, man. That would definitely be something if you just went through 12 rounds of Richardson Hitchins just going by the motions there against George Kambosos Jr., man. I don't know if that many people will be able to get through 12 rounds of that. Like when you have Richardson Hitchins, if I'm looking at this right, DraftKings has Richardson Hitchins as high as minus 3,000. Minus 3,000 there against George Kambosos Jr. And George Kambosos at basically 11-1 underdog. That's sad, man. That's absolutely sad. Hey, it don't even compare to like the co-feature bout there with Andy Cruz against Hironori Mashiro. So yeah, these two bouts that they have here, the main event and the co-feature on Matchroom Boxing, it's very, very yeah, I tell you, man. It ain't looking good when it comes to see if you could get like a good steal or something. But this would be like a monumental upset of sorts. There, George Kambosos was able to defeat Richardson Hitchins. Yeah, I do know what happened with Richardson Hitchins there against Gustavo Lemos last year, but then he was able to turn around and had his win over Liam Paro for the IBF super lightweight title. So now he's kind of like in the discussion as one of those guys to really float around in that top 10 or top 5 or so at 140 pounds. But I would say in order to be mentioned with the Gary Antoine Russells, the Alberto Boyos, I guess Teofimo Lopez until he moves up, because he might move up, then he would have to be really, really impressive here against George Kambosos, and not by no boring unanimous decision, as Alberto here is saying. But he got to be able to get a way to stop this dude, man. You're gonna be in there. You at like 5'10". Would have reached the 74 is Richardson Hitchins there, man. I'll see if we got this thing here on the rec. So hold on, let me see if I can get that there on the rec as they show his CV, as they say. They're the super lightweight division. BoxRec has him rated at number 4 at super lightweight. Yeah, BoxRec has a point system. It's not like a rating system like the TBRB or Ring or whatever, ESPN or what. Nah, it's more like a point system. So that's why you got Richardson Hitchins there currently at number 4. Okay. He's there at 5'10", would have reached the 74. And yeah, 19 bouts, 19 wins, 7 wins by way of knockout. Yeah, man. Yeah, I said stop him, but listen, when you got 19 wins and 7 of them are by way of knockout, you just basically, out boxing, out playing, and all this type of stuff. You're not really, sitting on the punches or really turning up the energy there against your opponent. You know what I mean? And with Hitchins, he talks a lot. You can see that he talks a lot. He talks a lot, but Topic said he's not so great of a trash talker. Hey, I heard him like respond to like Devin Haney or some of these other fighters, and man, I don't know what's up with him. And yeah, he was there. What was it? One time with like Bill Haney or something. Like Bill Haney was like, "Oh, scouting people and scouting opponents or whatever it is," and Richardson Hitchins was right next to him. Man, I don't know what in the world Hitchins is talking about on that. But yeah, you got Hitchins there at 27 years old, 5'10", would have reached the 74. They're from Manhattan, New York, of course. They're right in the middle of New York City there. And as I said there, this will be his 20th professional bout there against George Kambosos Jr. His last bout was against Liam Paro there, who was undefeated at the time. That did defeat, yes, I'll say it there, Subriel Matias for that IBF belt. But then Liam Paro beat Subriel Matias right for it. So it's just been basically rotating here over the past few months. He did have that fight against Gustavo Lemos in April of last year, and there were a few people that felt like he had some issues there with Gustavo Lemos over the course of those 12 rounds, but was able to get a unanimous decision there, beat Jose Zepeda by unanimous decision. That was almost like a clean sweep. There against John Bowser, that was a clean sweep, but you kind of see there, Yomar Alamo was his last, victory that was by knockout, as they had Alamo retire there, within the 8th round or around the 8th round, right? So last notable thing that I kind of like remember Hitchins on was when he fought Malik Hawkins, and Malik Hawkins was coming off his loss to Subriel Matias, stoppage loss to Subriel Matias, and then they put Malik Hawkins right back in the mix against Richardson Hitchins. They pretty much like threw Malik Hawkins to the wolves there in 2021. Man, that was just a crazy thing there. But you kind of see what Richardson Hitchins has been doing over the course of his career in his past few fights. But now, you got him going up against George Kambosos Jr. There at 31 years old, right? Like, I'm going to switch it over there. They should have this at George Kambosos Jr. with a record of 22-3 or something like that, if you're able to see it. And he is there with 10 wins by way of knockout. So I'm telling you, man, if there is a stoppage or any type of thing going on right there, it would be pretty much shocked if either one of these fighters ended up stopping these folks. You feel me? Or stopping the opponent, right? He's there at like 5'9", with a reach of 68, and they're from Sydney, Australia. We had, of course, his fight, as I mentioned there, with Jake Willie there as your replacement opponent there in March of 2025. And as I said, man, you had a loss, a win, 2 losses to Devin Haney, the win against Teofimo Lopez, but he had like 3 straight split decision wins from 2019 to 2021. So that kind of like shows like how close he has been in the mix in a number of these fights, So I'm like, I really don't rate George Kambosos Jr. that much. I really don't. I mean, when it comes to like an overall skill level, nah, he ain't it. He ain't it. So I'm really expecting for Richardson Hitchins to like basically a 12-0. Like I said, I'd be shocked if you get the stoppage, but for Richardson Hitchins to really be considered as a serious threat to a Gary Antoine Russell or a Subriel Matias or an Alberto Puello or a Teofimo Lopez or many of those other guys that you might have ranked high in the 140-pound division, he's going to have to stop George Kambosos. He's going to have to. But, we'll see on that. I think it's going to kind of like show that, hey, maybe he could try to get after a few of these other fighters there at 140 pounds. There's like a few guys I would say that could be mentioned there as a potential opponent of sorts. So, we'll see, how that goes there for Richardson Hitchins, because, I say that if he doesn't really show that he's worlds better than George Kambosos here in this, then I don't see him doing that much in the 140-pound division outside of, maybe a couple of defenses here. Now, as I mentioned, Subriel Matias is like the number 1 ranked fighter there in the IBF, but he's going to be having this fight against Alberto Puello on July 12th. So after that fight, like, Hitchins won't have to worry about much for a good little bit, unless if they say, hey, we'll have some, voluntary defenses here and there for Hitchins to have until maybe something opens up for a unification bout. But at least for right now, yeah, I don't see much for Richardson Hitchins after his fight against George Kambosos Jr. It's not going to look good there on that front. Now, you had the thing there with the co-feature about Andy Cruz going up against Hironori Mashiro. As I said, with the odds, them odds ain't really looking like nothing. It's similar odds to the main event. So it's like that shows you how they feel like this is a mismatch between Andy Cruz and Hironori Mashiro, right? Now, you have Andy Cruz that held like the IBF International lightweight title, right? And is there like undefeated there in the lightweight division. He is currently ranked number 3 in the IBF, right? And just has 5 fights, 5 professional fights. This will be his 6th fight here in the professional ranks. Of course, had his extended amateur career with gold medals and all that type of stuff there at 29 years old at a height of 5'9", right? His last bout was against Omar Salcido, got a unanimous decision win on that. So he's kind of like looking to see if they could get himself in the mix right there at the top of the lightweight division, right? Going up against Hironori Mishira with a record of 17 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw, 6 wins by way of knockout at 30 years old at a height of 5'10", okay, from Yokohama, Japan. Of course, a whole bunch of his fights have been in the same venue there in Japan at Korakuen Hall. Yeah, it's a little bit to say right there, right? But he's had a couple of stoppage victories here recently, but now he's going up against Andy Cruz, which is at a whole different skill level here. You know what I mean? So, and Andy Cruz is like right there in the mix where he could be one step closer for a world title shot, whether it's the IBF or the WBC. We got on July 12th there, the WBC lightweight title on the line. The champion there is Shakur Stevenson. The interim champion there, is at Williams Zepeda. So Andy Cruz is there at number 1. So he could be right in the mix there at next there for the WBC title. But with the IBF, you now got newly crowned IBF champion Ray Murataya that was elevated since Vasomachenko had retired. And Andy Cruz is the highest ranked fighter there on those rankings. So he could just make that move there for the IBF. Roberto said we got a card tomorrow there. Gabe Flores Jr., he's number 3 in the WBO rankings. Maybe he gets fed to Abdullah Mason soon. I'm here to tell you that even before all of this stuff, before the fights happened last Saturday, and we had the news about Keyshawn Davis missing weight, vacating the WBO lightweight title, that reps at Top Rank were going to be angling for Abdullah Mason to fight for that vacant WBO lightweight title. And Gabe Flores was somebody that they're like, no, they don't feel like Gabe Flores is going to be able to do it, So we got to see what we got here in store for, you were mentioning there, Gabriel Flores, right? Let me see here what we got there on the schedule for Gabriel Flores Jr. He should be there against Christian Villalba on tomorrow, he says, over at the Chicken Ranch Casino Resort. Oh my God. I don't know where they be having these same fights at. But that kind of like tells you, even though Christian Villalba is at 15-0, that tells you where like Gabe Flores is at right now. We know who the promoter is for the fights. There is that, right? So listen, you think they're gonna have Gabe Flores Jr. go from that fight over to fight Abdullah Mason? Listen, man, I don't see that happening, man. I don't see that happening. His career went downhill at the Top Rank drop. Hey, I'm telling you, that's what they talk about. Hey, they were talking about, listen, we evaluated this kid, and I'm sorry, we don't see it. We don't see it. Hey, listen, I'm telling you, they don't see it. So, that was like, in the conversations, as far as like, going down the line, you know what I mean, with Abdullah Mason at number 2 in the WBO rankings. Of course, you got Sam Noakes there at number 1. Sam Noakes is out there with Queensberry Promotions, and they look like they were trying to make that happen. And if you saw the recent post from the WBO president there, Gustavo Olivieri, soon after Abdullah Mason had his fight with Jeremiah Nakatila, he's like, we look like we're ready to put Abdullah Mason there in position to fight for the vacant lightweight title there. You know what I mean? Uh, he says, "Yo, you either got the skills or you don't." And he don't. Oh man, yo, come on. Hey, listen. Hey, like as I mentioned that, I mean he gonna be on this card against Christian Villalba there for Gabe Flores Jr. and that just shows like where he's at currently in his career, and compare that to like as we mentioned there with Abdullah Mason. They're at 135. You got Andy Cruz here coming up fighting on Saturday night in that co-feature against Hironori Mashiro. They're at 135. He's right in the mix to compete for the IBF. I would say the IBF title because with the WBC, whoever wins between Shakur Stevenson and William Zepeda, they don't have to worry about like a mandatory defense or nothing like that until a year from now. So that the best route for Andy Cruz would be about with Ray Murataya, and they could go and call for that fight with Ray Murataya. I'll just say that, but that's the main gist of what's going to be happening here with this matchroom card. Richard Hitchins against George Kambosos, Andy Cruz against Hironori Mashiro. You got like a few other fights there that's going to be on this card. I'm going to see if I could pull this up here. You're going to have a heavyweight bout that's going to be on there. Taramona. Yeah. Like what is it? Like the basketball player Bol, not Manute Bol, but Bol. Yeah, we got a heavyweight fighter here. His name Taramona. He's going to be fighting in the 6th rounder against Lee Whitfield. You got Pablo Valdez against Cesar Diaz. You got Nishat Dev against Josue Silva. I think Behind the Hands TV may have an interview with Nishat Dev that's on their YouTube channel. So if you want to catch a little bit more about Nishat Dev, you might want to check out Behind the Hands TV there. You're going to have Zakeem Moses on this card as well in his 4th pro fight going up against Carl Rogers. And you're going to have Adam Maka in his pro debut against Rafael Castillo. So that is your Matchroom boxing card for Saturday night coming up, and that will be on the Zone. So that is, mainly the gist of what we got coming up this weekend is that, compare that to all of the action and commotion and everything that happened last weekend on Friday and Saturday. You had the Salida Promotions card last Friday, therefore International Boxing Hall of Fame weekend. Of course, you had the thing going down in Norfolk, right? You had the MVP card in Orlando, and you had the Pro Box card in San Antonio there. So that you had like 4 fight cards there last weekend, and in this weekend, you pretty much just have this one here with Matchroom. So sometimes it's very busy and sometimes it's not. That's boxing for you, So that's what we're looking at here coming up this weekend. We might have more in store coming up the following weekend. There's supposed to be a Rising Star Promotions fight card there that features Vito Milnicki Jr. And you're gonna also have Truck Simpson going up there. He's gonna be having that fight. What was it? He's, I've been, just trying to catch up with, what had been happening over the weekend. So you're going to have Lorenzo Truck Simpson there that's going to have his fight against the Hot Tucker. That's going to be really the fight of the night there in Newark on June 21st. So Rising Star Promotions has a fight card June 21st. We're going to have even like more fights here coming up over the summer. So we're going to be talking about that here on the Boxing Source there. So that's what you got at least coming up this weekend, the following weekend, and then we're going to, keep talking about, what's going on as far as like the schedule is concerned. I mean, we could, hit the thing up here. Just bear with me for a little bit, and then we'll be able to get that here for you as we got, Brian Norman Jr. going up against Jin Sasaki on June 19th. So next Thursday, and that's going to be around 4 a.m. Eastern time next Thursday. They recently announced it that Top Rank or ESPN Plus They're going to be picking up that fight card, and then it's going to be starting at 4 a.m. Eastern time next Thursday. I might, just being honest with y'all, I might have to just figure out when that actual fight between Brian Norman Jr. and Jin Sasaki takes place. If I have to wake up at like 6 a.m. next Thursday, then I'll probably just wake up at 6 a.m. next Thursday in order to, see that fight, because ain't no way I'm gonna be watching that whole fight card from start to finish live. No, that ain't happening. Ain't no way. No. Like all of these Japan fight cards, in a way beyond, or who we had last week, right? We had Tenshin that was on the fight card. You know what I mean? All of those guys. I'm not waking up like at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning Eastern time. I don't care how good the fight is. I'll catch it when I wake up. I don't have to touch no social medias and nothing. Just go ahead and just watch the thing on ESPN Plus, on the replay, and then I'll just make what I can with that. But waking up that early, that ain't happening. No. So that's what we got here coming up, man. Hold on. He said Brian Norman Jr.'s own cousins will be waking up at 2 a.m. to see him. Oh man, we got something here, man. I'm telling you. Oh my God, yo, that's yeah. Props to Brian Norman there, young champion there, WBO welterweight champion, making his first, his defense there against Jin Sasaki. But yeah, being up that early, yeah, that ain't gonna be me. That ain't gonna be me. All right, so next thing on the docket, we had this whole thing here, Turki Alalshikh. He be doing this thing as far as like trying to make these fights here and there, and we was making these big announcements, like he's Vince McMahon or Dana White or whatever it is. I mean, it is what it is with that, right? But he recently had the whole thing there with Canelo Alvarez and Terrence Crawford, right? So pretty much like made that announcement there the other day. I'm going to see if we could share it, because man, I don't know if this thing had been pretty much tripping here on this front. But here, we got the whole thing there with Turki Alalshikh. Says Riyadh season and Sela present the fight of the century. The fight of the century, y'all. The fight of the century. Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Crawford for the undisputed super middleweight championship and Ring Magazine belt, September 13th in Las Vegas. Streaming live on Netflix is part of a strategic partnership with Riyadh Season. Has the tags, has the ats and all that type of stuff there. Yeah, I'm looking forward to, I guess, the events and the fights and all that type of stuff. They recently announced there through the Box Fan Expo that is based in Las Vegas that they will have their next Box Fan Expo at the Las Vegas Convention Center on September 13th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. like they usually do, whether it's on September or in May. Last year it was in May. But here for this actual fight, I haven't seen a venue yet. They had initially had it for Allegiant Stadium, but that was when the fight was scheduled for September 12th. September 13th, as many people knew then, if they did the research, September 13th, there's a home game scheduled for UNLV there against Idaho State. So as far as like having a fight there at Allegiant Stadium September 13th, no. They could have had it September 12th, but no. So that leaves what? T-Mobile Arena maybe, or MGM Grand Garden Arena? Like I don't know. I really don't know. And for me, all I got to do to see if there's something booked, for or at a venue at a certain date is to, look at the schedule for, the Nevada State Athletic Commission. And, for those, that kind of like look in there, I'll see if I can share it as well. I mean, coming from this, we got it switched over, right? So you see there, that's supposed to be what, September of this year. I see something for September 20th. I see something for September 27th. As of right now, I don't see anything for September 13th. Now, via email, I haven't seen anything from Netflix or nothing like that. Maybe they have something on their site for it. I haven't looked on Netflix website for if they got anything in reference to this particular fight. What I'm looking at here is this kind of has a feeling of a private type event, like how they did for Times Square. That's what it's kind of like looking at for me. If you had the idea of being at Allegiant Stadium for that Friday, but you knew that Saturday and then later on Sunday, Allegiant Stadium was going to be booked for football. So that kind of like limits what you have as far as like venues are concerned. You got T-Mobile Arena, cool. You got MGM Grand Garden Arena, cool. I wouldn't have any issues with either one of those venues. But given that we're 3 months away, it is good 3 months from what's going on. I'm sorry. As long as I've been covering the sport, I've been saying, hey, we got to have something more concrete. You know what I mean? So I have to continue to look here on this website here for the Nevada State Athletic Commission to see if they're going to have any venues, on hold or put on hold for that particular date. It says, it says someone at the Boxing Voice called in and said their wife works at T-Mobile Arena. They've been told that they'll be hosting the Canelo fight in September. Okay. I mean, that could be it, that's the other joint that I could try, also, right, is to go on to T-Mobile Arena and see if they got, either open dates or whatever they got, you know what I mean? So you go on T-Mobile Arena, you got like, open events or all events or whatnot. So, that date's supposed to be open. All they got is, a couple of Las Vegas Aces games coming up, right? So it should be switched over. It says Las Vegas Aces got a couple of home games, for September 7th and September 9th. And then they ain't got anything until, September 19th for the music festival they got going on, the annual music festival. So that's going to be open. That venue is going to be open at least for, September 13th. So, hey, T-Mobile Arena, I wouldn't have any issues with that. So we could see this fight at T-Mobile Arena. You'll make that trip over. As I mentioned there with the Box Fan Expo, that's going to be at the convention center. See if I'll be able to go to that. Already like posted, information about that on the boxingsource.net. So yeah, we could go ahead and have this, fight card here at the T-Mobile Arena. Then we'll see how that goes. I mean, that could be, pretty good on that front. But with that being said, we have, more in reference to what could potentially happen for this fight card. And, with it being live on Netflix, they'll probably have, a whole lot of money invested into it. We saw what happened last year when you had Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson and the amount of viewership that it had, and that Netflix wasn't necessarily ready for that amount of people to log in and to be invested into one event at one time. So you had a whole lot of, lags and delays and all that type of stuff. But I mean, here for Netflix, having that fight card. We got something coming up here July 11th there with the all women's fight card at Madison Square Garden with Taylor versus Serrano 3 headlining that. So Netflix is making a few moves here when it comes to the sport of boxing, and it could, end up being pretty good if they continue to have good events there. So if they're able to have this thing happen here with Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford, it could be at T-Mobile Arena as what could have been on the Boxing Voice earlier today or something like that. So we could have that going down, right? All right. So with that being said, you got Turki Alalshikh saying more as far as like his undercard risk list. Man, he said, what is it? The world will be watching Riyadh season's Canelo Alvarez Terence Crawford fight of the century on Netflix. And for that, I want to load the undercard with young, hungry fighters who deserve the chance to perform under the bright lights. These are some of the names I hope to see fighting on Las Vegas on September 13th, led by the ring champion Junto Nakatani. Okay, is this the same Junto Nakatani that just fought Ryosuke Nishida on Sunday for a unified bantamweight championship? So he's looking to have him fight again in 3 months. Interesting. Okay, so Junto Nakatani said, but also, if you are interested, you and your teams know how to find me. And he named a number of fighters there, including Christian and Billy, Redo Sasumi, who's been on a whole bunch of these ring fights, right? Justin Valoria, Emiliano Alvarado, Jamar Talley, Nishant Dev, who I just mentioned is on this matchroom card, and Abdullah Mason. So with Abdullah Mason, we talked about that with Abdullah potentially fighting for the WBO title. Now, maybe they could have it to where he could fight for that vacant WBO title on this ring card on September 13th. Now, I recently spoke with Valiant Mason, the father of Abdullah Mason, and he's kind of like interested. He's interested in having Abdullah Mason be involved potentially there in that ring card, but their aim is to be sure that they fight for the WBO lightweight title next. I'm going to see if I can work on having a conversation with Valiant Mason and Abdullah Mason later on down the line, and see if we could have them on either live or through a Zoom call or something like that, and get a few comments there from Valiant Mason and Abdullah Mason there. Like I said, I was out there at Scope Arena for his fight against Jeremiah Nakathila, and he just broke down Nakathila and had Nakathila saying, I'm not okay. I don't want to go out there. I'm not okay. So we couldn't see any knockdowns or nothing like that on that particular fight on Saturday night. But, Abdullah Mason is like one of the more impressive fighters there within that, 135, 140 pound divisions there. And, a lot of boxing fans want to see more from Abdullah Mason. And, as I mentioned in previous podcasts and things like that, and you can also see through a couple of articles on the boxingsource.net, Top Rank wants to have Abdullah Mason be as active as possible as they plan to have 2 more fights for Abdullah Mason this year. That's after fighting in February, fighting in April, and then fighting last Saturday. They wanted 2 more fights, so we would have had 5 fights this year. But with this being potentially him going for the WBO lightweight title, that might, kind of delve a little bit of those plans off for a little bit. You know what I mean? So we'll see here with Abdullah Mason. Like I said, I'll see if I can secure a conversation with him and his father, maybe a few of his brothers there too, because you see the Mason 5 there that was all there for his fight that he had against Jeremiah Nakathila on Saturday. But hey, it looks like Turki Alalshikh is trying to have a lot of things going on and going down here for this upcoming fight card, September 13th. Okay. Now, a number of fight fans are saying, like, these are kind of like some names that really could make this card be interesting, but with a lot of money that will be invested into the main event, that there might not be much here for the fighters. But if it works like how a lot of these events work, particularly these big events, right? The sponsorships and all of those marketing things and stuff like that go into the purse for the main event. The purse for the fighters is basically the gate for the event that takes place. So if you're going to have a lot of people there for the main event that pay the tickets, that's going to cover the cost for all of those fighters on the undercard. So whatever price they agree to on the undercard, if it's a sold out arena, then they'll be able to handle the purse, no problem. You know what I mean? So with that being said, I want to see if we could have, at the very least, Christian and Billy on this card. Now, was rumored there through Brunch Boxing, Matt of Brunch Boxing, right, that we could have one super middleweight involved in that card, and that is Lester Martinez. They said something was worked out for Lester Martinez to be on this card for September 13th. So we could potentially have Christian and Billy versus Lester Martinez there in the super middleweight division. If they have that fight on there, I would be all for it. We need to have more of these top-rated super middleweights going up against each other. Of course, with Canelo Alvarez holding all the belts, you got to see what's going on below that with the Christian and Billy's, with the Osleys Iglesias, with Lester Martinez, with Diego Pacheco. Who else is out there? Maybe Edgar Berlanga, Bet the Bully, is out there. We just recently had his win over Darius Fulgham, right? You had Jamal Charlo that's now in the mix with his win over Thomas Cornflake Lamana. Kevin Lele Sajo. All of these fighters that are there in the super middleweight division, they need to mix it up. They need to get it on. They need to get it cracking. We need to see those fights there at super middleweight. If we could have someone like a Christian and Billy there against Lester Martinez, that would be a really, really good fight there at 168 pounds to kind of like say, okay, the winner of this could be potentially next up there at 168. Shout out to Lance Meyer here in the building here on the Midweek Report, man. Shout out to you, man. I'm just talking about, this whole thing with this Ring Magazine card and all of that. You had Terrence Crawford out there with Canelo Alvarez. Crawford, was in attendance there over in Norfolk. He was out there for the whole weekend, and I'm waiting for a post on Fight Hype that involves Terrence Crawford. They have a couple of things there as far as like interviews involving Terrence Crawford, but I'm waiting for something in particular with Terrence Crawford and one of those guys out there for Fight Hype, because Terrence Crawford, as they say, Terrence Crawford is a competitor. Always has been a competitor in all type of sports and everything like that. And, you may have seen some clips of him out there on the field at Norfolk State University with Mike Vick. But he had something else that was going on during that weekend, and he was competing in, some games there, and they did not expect for Terrence Crawford to do what he did. So I'm waiting for Fight Hype to put that post up. You know what I mean? So you'll see more there with Terrence Crawford, and like I said, he's there. He's they're cool. You could chill with him and everything like that. Just don't get on his bad side or nothing. And he'll be there. Cool with you. You know what I'm saying? So looking for more there with Terrence Crawford over the course of these next few months, as we're 3 months away from this. So he's been in the gym and whatnot. And he's, definitely getting himself prepared for his bout against Canelo Alvarez. I think he's kind of, been off and on prepared for this Canelo bout since the beginning of this year. It's just that, they waited for them to get the financials worked out and all that type of stuff, the financials, the date, all of that. And once they got that said, now he's, kind of like locked in to go and face Canelo Alvarez for that undisputed super middleweight title. As far as like this overall event is concerned, they have it on Netflix. That'll, give it an opportunity to have some proper promotion for this fight and the fight card. And, for Mexican Independence Weekend, I mean, you already know like the people will be out there in Las Vegas. They'll definitely be out there in Las Vegas for this. So looking forward to all of that and seeing what's up with Canelo versus Crawford for September 13th. Man, as far as I know, I'm not sure if they have the opening. Well, they should have the odds for it, right? But I don't know if it's really changed that much. They had it to Canelo being the favorite at plus or minus 195 on DraftKings. Hold up, y'all. You go up to proboxnods.com. I'm going to see this joint right here. They got Canelo at minus 195 on DraftKings, minus 180 at Caesars, minus 205 on FanDuel, and Terrence Crawford at plus 158 on FanDuel, plus 155. So around like 150, plus 150. Like you put on 100, you getting like additional 50 back. Man, that's a mad close. That's close, man. That is close odds for someone that is coming up from 154 pounds in this last fight. Previous fight, he was at 147. Going up against Canelo Alvarez, who's been at 168 for a good amount of time. Okay. Yeah, I know where Canelo Alvarez started his professional career, but at the same time, look at where Terrence Crawford started his professional career. So, yeah, that's something. Topic, he says Lester Martinez is a problem in his division. Yeah, I mean, he's, had those impressive victories there, past couple victories that he had. He went up against the former IBO super middleweight champion in Carlos Condora last year. Then he had his fight against Joshua James in March. Ended up beating up Joshua James within the 4 rounds. So he's really a good fighter to kind of compete there in the super middleweight division. So him against a Christian and Billy, that would make for a really good fight. Christian and Billy is an all-action type of fighter. He really doesn't, do much boxing. He'll just be right there in front of you, and he'll make sure that he just, hurts you with every punch that he throws, pretty much, right? So he does get a lot out of his punches, but he makes sure that he hurts his opponents there for that. So that being said, if we have a Christian and Billy versus Lester Martinez there at 168, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That would be a really good fight there. That's on the September fight card. But we're looking to see how this thing is for Canelo versus Terrence Crawford. I did see like this supposed poster for it. Hold on, I gotta pull that one up because it's funny to me how you try to build up a big event, and you got to be a little bit original of sorts. You got to be more original on this thing. You feel me? And for them to go ahead and do something like this, like how were y'all going to put in this as your poster? Hold on a second. I'll show the poster here real quick. Hold on. Here you go. All right. So Ring Magazine having this as their fight poster or fight promo. It says the one. Canelo versus Crawford. Who's the one? And I'm like, come on, y'all. Come on. What are we doing? What are we doing? This is exactly what was out there. What is it? 13 or so years, 12 years ago. 12 years ago, right? So hold on, y'all. So y'all just saw that, right? Okay. That is no different than what we saw 12 years ago. Okay. Let me show y'all what they had 12 years ago as a fight poster for Mayweather versus Canelo. The very same thing. Okay. Listen, I might still have the program. I might still have it. That, like, come on, man. To have that, come on, y'all. As as they say, they copied my whole flow, word for word, bar for bar. That's basically what you saw right there. And that's just absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. But looks like they're gonna go forward with that as their marketing tool and whatnot. And yes, they are planning to have these press conferences or pressers for Canelo versus Crawford. One of them being in New York City, but it's part of the Fanatics Fan Fest in New York City next weekend. Next Sunday is supposed to be, I think, it's supposed to be for, what is that, the 21st or something like that. But yeah, I ain't doing it. I ain't going to that. No. If it ain't like something that's available to the public, nope. Not gonna do it. So you'll see a couple of these press conferences for this fight, and once they do happen, then maybe we'll get more as far as like who could potentially be on the fight card for that weekend. But yeah, to have that as your fight poster, come on, y'all gotta be more creative than that. Now, also with Turki Alalshikh, right? He did say something as far as like a message for people who want to have these bouts in the ring, but don't necessarily want to engage that much. Then, I'm like, come on, nah. So he said something in reference to fighters not doing what they need in the ring. I'm gonna see here. Here goes the post. I want to see if I can share that post here right quick, y'all, because this was kind of funny to me. All right. So he says, of course, there from this point on, I don't want to see any more Tom and Jerry type boxing matches. Tom and Jerry type boxing matches. Come on. Where one fighter is running around the ring and the other is chasing him. We can no longer support these kind of fights with Riyadh season and the ring. We want to support fighters who leave it all in the ring with heart and pride. I wonder why he would say something like that. Is it because of the two events that he had hosted in May, Cinco de Mayo weekend, over in Times Square, and then also in Riyadh? You had the main event there in Riyadh, Canelo Alvarez versus William Skull. And as I said, William Skull did his best impression of MC Hammer over the course of that fight. And then also, what happened in Times Square, particularly they said with Devin Miles Haney there against Jose Carlos Martinez, right? Ramirez. But listen, I don't know what he's trying to imply, because you're going to also have somebody involved in a July 12th card that has been, accused of doing that type of stuff in Shakur Nafis Saeed Stevenson. So, with that being said, are we going to have more of these fights where you could have more action, and that the fighters that have the type of style where they aren't necessarily engaging in more deal with distance and just throwing one or two punches at a time and keep it away from their opponent, hit and not get hit type of style where you don't really see that much action, but you just see somebody like clearly outboxing their opponent? I don't know. But for Turki Alalshikh to say this at this particular point, I think it's a response to what happened last month, because you ain't gonna see nobody like a William Skull in the ring there involved in these ring cards or Turki Alalshikh cards anytime soon. And then here with Devin Haney, he could have been involved in another fight against Teofimo Lopez, but that fight got nixed. We haven't heard anything in reference to that, and now we don't know what's going to be next here for Devin Haney. And so I wonder how a few of these other fights are going to, take place. I will say this though. I talked about this whole thing with Shakur Stevenson and William Cepeda, but there might be another fight where you could potentially have this happen. Alberto Puello versus Subriel Matias could potentially happen. Be on the lookout for that. But hey, we got those fights coming up July 12th, and those matchups, they kind of look good on paper, but from a style perspective, you might have to watch out for it. Might have to watch out. We could end up having some below par action in those fights. We'll see. But very interesting from Turki Alalshikh for him to kind of say that at this particular juncture here. So, that's mainly what I had here for the midweek report. Just a 1 hour show here for Wednesday. Like I said, I'm going to work on getting Abdullah Mason here on the channel. Okay, I'm gonna work on that. See if I can schedule something for that, and then if I can and lock it down, then I'll be able to just do that live or whatever it is, and then we'll be able to watch live. Big ups for everyone listening into the midweek report here for this week. If you can, hit the like button, hit the share button to support the Boxing Source, support the movement. We got our things here, social media there through Twitter or X or whatever they want to call it this week. You got Instagram. We also have a Facebook page, and we got the website, theboxingsource.net, where I'm posting up the thing there for the weekend, fighting in photos with a number of those fights that took place there for Norfolk, Virginia. So you'll be able to see photos there from that, as yes, I was there ringside for that fight card, right? So you'll be able to see that, but we'll be able to have more here on the channel. We do have the Boxing Source podcast scheduled for Sunday. Yeah, back on the regularly scheduled time, Sunday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, here on the Boxing Source channel. And we got our action here on Rumble as well. So I gotta catch up on putting interviews there on Rumble, so that people that are just exclusive to Rumble, they'll be able to watch it there. And then soon, just real soon, if I get more action as far as like interviews and scheduling things too, I'm gonna have them posted on Rumble, not on YouTube, but on Rumble. So we'll see how that works out. With that being said, that is what I got here for this week's report, and I'll catch y'all later. Peace out.